Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Orbital Station 7, watching the blue marble of Earth slowly rotate beneath him. The morning shift had just begun, and everything seemed normal in the vast emptiness of space around. Their home planet. Jake had been running this station for 3 years now, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Commerce Alliance and started trading with alien species. Across known space. The coffee in his mug was still warm when Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez walked up to him with her daily report. She looked tired but alert, her dark hair pulled back in the standard military style that all orbital defense personnel wore. Amy had been his second-in-command for 2 years, and Jake trusted her judgment completely. "All systems green, Commander," Amy said, handing him the electronic tablet with the overnight reports. 3 merchant ships passed through our sector heading to the Jupiter colonies, and 1 Centauri freighter requested permission to dock at Luna Station. Nothing unusual. Jake nodded and took the tablet, scanning through the routine information. Trade routes were busy these days, with human colonies spread across dozens star systems and alien partners, bringing new technologies and resources to Earth. Life was good for humanity in 2157. They had found their place among the stars as peaceful. Traders and explorers, even if they were considered one of the younger and less advanced species in the galaxy. The communication panel near them suddenly crackled to life with an incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command. Captain Brian Lewis appeared on the screen, his weathered face showing concern that made Jake immediately alert. "Jake, we're picking up some unusual readings on the deep space sensors," Ryan said without his usual pleasantries. "Large ships, moving toward Earth at high speed. Could be merchant vessels, but they're not responding to our identification requests." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. In 3 years of running orbital defense, unidentified ships always meant potential trouble. "How many ships, Brian? And do we have any idea which species they belong to?" "At least 30 vessels, possibly more. They're still too far out for detailed scans, but the energy signatures don't match any of our regular trading partners. Could be a new species wanting to make contact, but protocol says we should be ready for anything." Amy moved closer to listen to the conversation, her hand instinctively moving to the emergency alert controls. Jake had trained his crew well, and they all knew that first contact with unknown aliens could go either way. Some species were peaceful and wanted to trade, while others saw humanity as competition or worse. "Put all stations on yellow alert," Jake ordered Amy. "I want every sensor array focused on those incoming ships. And get me a direct line to President Rodriguez on Earth." Amy quickly began implementing the alert status, while Jake continued talking with Captain Lewis. The unknown ships were still hours away, but something about this situation felt wrong. Most alien species announced themselves when approaching human space, following the protocols established by the Galactic Commerce Alliance. Dr. Lisa Carter was working late in her underground laboratory beneath Denver when the first reports of unknown ships reached Earth's scientific community. As one of the leading experts on alien biology and behavior, Lisa had spent years studying the different species that humanity had encountered. She was currently analyzing tissue samples from a new plant species discovered on Kepler 442b when her assistant, Marcus Johnson, burst into the lab with urgent news. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this immediately," Marcus said, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. "The orbital defense stations are tracking a massive fleet of unknown ships, heading straight for Earth. Command wants your opinion on what species they might belong to." Lisa looked up from her microscope, her mind immediately shifting from botanical research to the more pressing matter of alien contact. She had advised Earth Defense Command on several occasions when dealing with new species, helping them understand alien motivations and cultural practices that could affect diplomatic relations. "Show me the sensor data," Lisa said, moving to the main computer terminal in her lab. Marcus quickly pulled up the information being transmitted from the orbital stations, and Lisa studied the energy patterns and ship configurations with growing concern. The ships were large, much larger than typical merchant vessels, and their energy signatures suggested advanced military technology. More troubling was their formation, which followed patterns that Lisa recognized from her studies of aggressive alien cultures. These were not peaceful traders or explorers. Marcus, contact General Stevens at Mars Command immediately, Lisa ordered, her scientific training keeping her voice steady despite her growing alarm. Tell him I recommend moving all colonial defense forces to high alert status. These ships are military vessels, and they're not here for diplomatic purposes. President Alex Rodriguez was in his morning briefing when the call came in from Orbital Station 7. The president was a veteran politician who had guided humanity through its integration into galactic society, but he had never faced a situation like this. His military advisors quickly gathered around the conference table as Commander Morrison's image appeared on the main screen. Mr. President, we have confirmed 37 large vessels approaching Earth at high speed, Jake reported, his professional manner barely concealing his concern. They refuse to respond to our identification requests, and their formation suggests hostile intent. I'm recommending we move to red alert status. President Rodriguez felt the weight of his office pressing down on him. As the leader of humanity, any decision he made could affect the lives of billions of people on Earth and in the colonies. Commander, what's our defensive capability against a fleet that size? Sir, we have 12 orbital defense platforms and about 40 patrol ships in the Earth system, Jake replied honestly. If these are military vessels from an advanced species, we would be significantly outgunned. The President's chief military advisor, General Paul Stevens, who was participating via communication link from Mars Colony, spoke up. Mr. President, I have to agree with Commander Morrison's assessment. We should prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. I recommend evacuating key government personnel to secure locations and putting all military forces on maximum alert. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive Zephyrian battle cruiser Dominator, watching the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled their section of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and Vexstar took great pride in maintaining their reputation for swift and decisive military action. The humans had been growing too bold lately, establishing colonies in systems that the Zephyrian Empire considered within their sphere of influence. Worse, other minor species were beginning to see humanity as an example of successful independence from the great powers. This could not be allowed to continue. Admiral, the human orbital stations are hailing us again, reported his communications officer. They're requesting identification and asking us to state our intentions. Vexstar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the bridge. His crew joined in the laughter, amused by the audacity of such primitive beings trying to challenge Zephyrian authority. Ignore their pathetic attempts at communication. These insects will learn their place soon enough. The Zephyrian fleet moved into position around Earth, their advanced cloaking technology making it impossible for human sensors to get accurate counts of their numbers. Vexstar had brought enough firepower to reduce the entire planet to molten rock if necessary, but he preferred to make examples that other species could witness and learn from. Begin the bombardment, Vexstar ordered, his voice filled with cold satisfaction. Target their major population centers first. I want the humans to understand the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. The first energy beams struck Earth's major cities without warning. New York disappeared in a brilliant flash of superheated plasma, followed seconds later by London, Tokyo, and Moscow. The orbital defense stations tried desperately to respond, but they were designed to handle pirates and small raiders. Not a full-scale military invasion, by a technologically superior species, Commander Morrison watched in horror as the cities below were systematically destroyed. His orbital station was too far away to provide any meaningful defense, and his small fleet of patrol ships would be destroyed instantly if they engaged the massive Zephyrian vessels. "Amy, get me an emergency channel to all human colonies," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the devastation he was witnessing. "Send out a general alert. Earth is under attack by unknown hostile forces." Dr. Carter felt the ground shake beneath her underground laboratory as the energy beams struck Denver. The city above her was being reduced to ruins, but the deep military bunkers had been designed to survive nuclear attacks and held against the alien bombardment. Emergency lighting bathed the laboratory in red as power systems switched to backup. Generators. The communication systems were still functioning, and Lisa could hear the desperate reports coming in from around the globe. Over 2 billion people had died in the first hour of the attack, with more cities being targeted every few minutes. The Zephyrian Empire was demonstrating their power in the most brutal way possible. 3 weeks had passed since the Zephyrian attack turned Earth's greatest cities into smoking craters. Captain Ryan Bell crawled through the ruins of what had once been downtown Chicago, his military training keeping him alive in a world that had become a nightmare. The Zephyrian occupation forces had established checkpoints throughout the destroyed city, forcing the surviving humans to scavenge for food and water while avoiding alien patrols. Ryan had been a combat engineer before. The attack, stationed at a base outside the city when the energy beams fell from the sky. He watched his home burn from 20 miles away, knowing that his wife Sarah and their 2 children had been downtown when the attack began. The rage that filled him was cold and calculating, the kind of anger that could be shaped into something useful. Moving carefully through the rubble, Ryan made his way to a prearranged meeting point where other survivors had been gathering. The Zephyrians seemed confident that the broken humans posed no threat, which gave Ryan hope that organized resistance was still possible. He had found 12 other military personnel scattered across the ruins, along with dozens of civilians who refused to give up. The meeting point was an old subway tunnel that had partially collapsed during the bombardment. The Zephyrians rarely ventured underground, preferring to patrol the surface where their hover vehicles could move freely. Ryan slipped through a crack in the concrete and found Lieutenant Jenny Walsh waiting for him with a small group of survivors. "Any word from the other cities?" Ryan asked quietly, knowing that their communication devices had limited range after the alien jamming systems went online. Jenny shook her head, her face grim in the dim light from their salvaged flashlights. "Nothing from New York or Los Angeles, but we did pick up a weak signal from what might be survivors in Detroit. The Zephyrians are getting lazy about their patrols, Ryan. They think we're completely beaten." Ryan allowed himself a small smile at this news. Military overconfidence was a weakness that could be exploited, and the Zephyrians were already showing signs of treating Earth as conquered territory rather than maintaining the alert status needed. For active occupation. Dr. Lisa Carter had been trapped in her underground laboratory for 3 weeks, but she was far from idle. The Denver facility had been designed to survive nuclear war, and the Zephyrian bombardment had actually sealed her in more securely than the original builders had intended. With backup power systems keeping her equipment running, Lisa had been analyzing every piece of data she could gather about their alien occupiers. The laboratory's deep sensors were still functional, allowing Lisa to monitor Zephyrian movements and communications in the area above her buried facility. What she discovered gave her the first real hope since the attack began. The aliens were not as technologically superior as they wanted everyone to believe. Marcus Johnson worked beside her, his young face showing the stress of their situation, but his mind still sharp and focused on their research. Together they had been studying the energy signatures from Zephyrian weapons and vehicles, looking for weaknesses that human technology might be able to exploit. "Dr. Carter, look at this," Marcus said, pointing to readings on his computer screen. "The Zephyrian power systems have a very specific frequency pattern. If we could generate interference at the right wavelength, their equipment might become unstable." Lisa studied the data with growing excitement. Her years of research into alien technologies had taught her that every species developed along certain patterns, creating both strengths and weaknesses in their systems. The Zephyrians had focused so heavily on raw power that they had neglected to protect against more subtle forms of attack. More importantly, Lisa realized that her laboratory contained something the Zephyrians knew nothing about. Project Prometheus had been classified above her security level before the attack, but the emergency protocols had given her access to files that revealed humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of situation. On Mars Colony, General Paul Stevens stood in the command center, watching reports flow in from across human space. The Red Planet had become the de facto capital of humanity after Earth's government was forced underground, and Paul found himself coordinating the response to the greatest crisis in human history. The Mars Colony had over 2 million inhabitants, mostly researchers, miners, and military personnel who supported Earth's expansion into space. More importantly, Mars was home to several advanced manufacturing facilities that had been producing experimental military equipment for the past decade. "General, we're getting reports from the asteroid mining stations," said Colonel Amy Foster, Paul's intelligence officer. "The Zephyrians haven't detected our operations in the outer system. They seem to be focused entirely on the inner planets." Paul nodded, studying the tactical display that showed Zephyrian forces spread across the solar system. The aliens had positioned their main fleet around Earth, with smaller forces guarding the approaches to Mars and the Jupiter colonies. But they had ignored the hundreds of small mining operations scattered throughout the asteroid belt, probably considering them too insignificant to worry about. This was exactly the kind of mistake that Paul had been hoping for. The asteroid miners were tough, independent people who knew how to survive in the harshest environments. More importantly, their mining equipment could be converted into weapons if properly modified. Dr. Helen Brooks emerged from the sealed laboratory, complex deep beneath Mars Colony's main dome, carrying data storage devices that contained years of secret research. Helen had been the chief scientist for Project Prometheus, a black operations program that most government officials didn't even know existed. The project had been started 20 years earlier, when human intelligence agencies began to suspect that not all alien species were as peaceful as they claimed. Working in complete secrecy, Helen's team had been reverse engineering alien technology and developing countermeasures against potential threats. "General Stevens, I need to brief you on capabilities that humanity possesses, but has never revealed to our alien trading partners," Helen said, her voice carrying both urgency and confidence. "Project Prometheus has been preparing for this day since we first made contact with alien civilizations." Paul gestured for Helen to continue, sensing that she was about to reveal information that could change everything about humanity's desperate situation. "We have successfully reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology from samples obtained through covert intelligence operations," Helen explained. "More than that, we have improved upon their designs in ways they never considered. The Harmony Drive system is operational and ready for implementation." The Harmony Drive was unlike anything the Zephyrians possessed. Instead of relying on brute force like alien technology, it manipulated quantum fields to achieve effects that seemed almost magical. Ships equipped with Harmony Drives could become invisible to most sensors, travel instantaneously across vast distances, and generate defensive shields that were nearly impenetrable. Back on Earth, Captain Ryan Bell's resistance network had grown from a few dozen survivors to over 300 people scattered across the ruins of major cities. They had established secure communication links using salvaged equipment and had begun systematic intelligence gathering on Zephyrian operations. The aliens had set up mining facilities to strip Earth of valuable resources, using human survivors as slave labor under harsh conditions. But the Zephyrians made a crucial error in their treatment of the human workforce. They assumed that broken people would be grateful for any chance to survive, not realizing that they were creating a network of potential saboteurs who knew every detail of alien operations. Jenny Walsh had made contact with survivor groups in 5 other cities, creating a communication network that stretched across the continent. The groups shared information about Zephyrian patrol patterns, equipment vulnerabilities, and supply routes that could be targeted for disruption. Dr. Carter finally established contact with the surface resistance when her deep sensors detected the specific radio frequencies that human military forces used for covert operations. Using carefully modulated transmissions that the Zephyrian monitoring systems couldn't detect, she began sharing her research data with Captain Bell's organization. The information that Lessa provided changed everything for the Resistance. Her analysis of Zephyrian technology revealed that their seemingly invincible weapons and vehicles had specific weaknesses that could be exploited using modified human equipment. More importantly, she had access to Project Prometheus files that contained detailed plans for fighting technologically superior enemies. Commander Jake Morrison was still alive on Orbital Station 7, though his position had become increasingly dangerous as Zephyrian forces tightened their control of Earth's orbital space. His station was too small to pose a direct threat, so the aliens had allowed it to continue operating while keeping it under constant surveillance. Jake used this situation to gather intelligence on Zephyrian fleet movements and communication patterns. His crew had modified their sensors to monitor alien transmissions without being detected, slowly building a picture of enemy operations throughout the solar system. The most important discovery came when Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez detected unusual energy readings from the outer system. 6 months after the devastating attack on Earth, Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching routine patrol reports flow across his command screens. The human resistance had become nothing more than minor annoyances, small acts of sabotage that his engineers could repair within hours. The Zephyrian occupation was proceeding exactly as planned, with Earth's resources being systematically stripped and shipped back to the Empire. The Admiral had reduced his orbital presence around Earth by 60%, reassigning most of his fleet to more important duties elsewhere in Zephyrian space. Only 12 major warships remained in Earth orbit, more than enough to handle any threat the broken humans might attempt to organize. His ground forces reported that human survivors were becoming increasingly cooperative as they realized the futility of resistance. What Vexstar didn't realize was that this cooperation was carefully orchestrated by Captain Ryan Bell's expanding resistance network. The humans had learned to appear beaten and submissive, while secretly preparing for something their alien occupiers couldn't imagine. Deep beneath the ruins of Chicago, Ryan met with representatives from resistance cells across North America. The subway tunnels had become a vast underground city where thousands of survivors lived and worked in complete secrecy. The Zephyrians rarely ventured into the damaged tunnel systems, considering them too unstable and unimportant to patrol regularly. The supply convoy from Detroit arrives tomorrow night, reported Commander Kate Wilson, a former Navy officer who had escaped when her ship was destroyed during the initial attack. Our people inside the mining facility have confirmed that it's carrying processed metals that the aliens need for their orbital platforms. Ryan studied the hand-drawn maps that showed Zephyrian supply routes across the continent. After months of careful observation, the Resistance had identified patterns in alien logistics that could be exploited. More importantly, they had people working in every major facility, gathering intelligence while appearing to be cooperative slave laborers. "What about the new equipment from Dr. Carter?" Ryan asked, knowing that their ability to strike effectively depended on the advanced weapons being developed in the underground laboratory beneath. Denver. Jenny Walsh smiled for the first time in months as she unpacked a device that looked like nothing more than a modified mining tool. She calls it a quantum disruptor. According to her tests, it can overload Zephyrian power systems from a distance of up to 200 meters. We have enough for 12 simultaneous strikes. The resistance had grown far beyond what the Zephyrians suspected. 30,000 survivors were actively working with the underground network, while another 100,000 provided intelligence and support when needed. They had established secure communications across 3 continents and had begun coordinating with off-world human forces. Dr. Lisa Carter worked around the clock in her buried laboratory, pushing the limits of human technology by combining Project Prometheus research with captured Zephyrian equipment. Her team had expanded to include 15 other scientists who had survived the bombardment in various underground facilities across North America. The breakthrough came when Marcus Johnson successfully interfaced human quantum manipulation technology with a captured Zephyrian power core. The result was a weapon system that could disrupt alien technology while remaining completely invisible to their sensors. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this immediately," Marcus called out from his workstation. "The harmonic resonance we've been working on just achieved a 97% success rate in our simulations. If we can build enough of these devices, we could disable every Zephyrian vehicle in a 50-kilometer radius." Lisa examined the test results with growing excitement. The quantum disruptor represented everything that made human technology different from alien designs. Where the Zephyrians relied on brute force and overwhelming power, humans had learned to find elegant solutions that achieved better results with less energy. More importantly, Lisa had been in secret communication with Dr. Helen Brooks on Mars colony. Together, they had been coordinating the development of weapons and defensive systems that would give humanity a fighting chance when the time came to strike back. On Mars colony, General Paul Stevens reviewed intelligence reports from across human space with a satisfaction that he kept carefully hidden from his staff. The Zephyrians had made exactly the mistakes that Project Prometheus had predicted they would make, allowing human forces to prepare in secret while their enemies grew overconfident. The asteroid mining operations had been converted into manufacturing facilities producing advanced weapons and spacecraft using Harmony Drive technology. Over 300 ships had been built in complete secrecy, each one appearing to be nothing more than a converted mining vessel, while actually carrying weapons that could destroy Zephyrian battle cruisers. Dr. Helen Brooks entered the command center carrying a datapad that contained the final technical specifications for humanity's secret fleet. "General, the Harmony Drive network is fully operational and ready for deployment. Our ships can now coordinate instantaneous attacks across multiple star systems while remaining invisible to enemy sensors." Paul studied the technical data with the eye of a career military officer who understood both the potential and the risks of what they were planning. "How many ships do we have ready for combat operations?" 347 vessels, equipped with Harmony drives, plus another 200 conventional ships that have been upgraded with our new weapon systems, Helen replied. "More importantly, we have confirmation that the resistance networks on Earth are ready to coordinate ground-based attacks." The plan that had been developing for months was elegantly simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. Human forces would wait until the Zephyrian fleet divided their strength, then strike simultaneously across multiple locations with weapons that their enemies didn't know existed. Commander Jake Morrison continued his careful intelligence gathering from Orbital Station 7, providing crucial information about Zephyrian fleet movements and communication patterns. His crew had become experts at appearing harmless while actually monitoring every aspect of alien operations in Earth orbit. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez detected unusual activity in the outer system that suggested the Zephyrians were preparing for another major military operation. Long-range sensors showed massive fleet movements toward the edge of human space, indicating that Admiral Vextar was planning to expand his campaign of conquest. "Commander, I'm picking up encrypted Zephyrian communications that mention something called the Centauri Operation," Amy reported, her voice tight with concern. "It looks like they're planning to attack our colonies in the Alpha Centauri system." Jake felt his heart sink as he realized what this meant. The Centauri colonies were home to nearly 50 million humans, mostly civilians who had no military defenses capable of stopping a Zephyrian assault. If Vextar followed the same pattern he had used on Earth, billions more humans would die. But Jake also realized that this presented the opportunity that human forces had been waiting for. If the Zephyrian fleet divided their strength between occupying Earth and attacking Centauri, they would be vulnerable to coordinated strikes by humanity's secret weapons. Admiral Vextar received his orders from Zephyrian High Command with the satisfaction of a predator who had been given permission to hunt. The Empire had decided that all human colonies must be eliminated to prevent any future resistance, and Vextar had been chosen to complete the extermination that had begun with Earth's bombardment. The Admiral began transferring 2/3 of his fleet to strike force configuration, leaving only the minimum necessary ships to maintain Earth's occupation. His intelligence officers assured him that the human survivors posed no threat to the reduced garrison, and Vextar was eager to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority to other alien species who might be watching. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure." To the Centauri system, Vextar ordered his staff. "We will show these human insects that there is no corner of space where they can hide from the Empire's justice." What the Admiral didn't know was that his communications were being monitored by human intelligence networks across multiple locations. Every detail of the Centauri operation was being transmitted to resistance forces on Earth and military commanders on Mars colony, allowing them to coordinate their response. Dr. Carter received the intelligence about the planned Centauri attack through her secure communication link with the surface resistance. She immediately contacted Dr. Brooks on Mars colony, knowing that this was the moment they had been preparing for since the first Zephyrian energy beam struck Earth. "Helen, they're dividing their fleet exactly as we predicted," Lisa transmitted through the quantum encrypted channel. "If we're going to strike back, this is our best opportunity." On Mars colony, General Stevens assembled his senior staff to review the final attack plans that had been months in preparation. The timing would be crucial, requiring perfect coordination between ground-based resistance forces on Earth and the secret fleet waiting in the outer system. Captain Ryan Bell received his orders through the underground communication network. Admiral Vextar stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship as the Zephyrian assault fleet departed Earth orbit, leaving behind what he considered more than adequate forces to maintain control over the broken human survivors. 24 massive warships formed the core of his strike force, carrying enough firepower to reduce the Centauri colonies to ashes, just as they had done to Earth's great cities. The Admiral felt confident that this second demonstration of Zephyrian power would finally convince the remaining human settlements to surrender without resistance. After witnessing the complete destruction of Earth, and now Centauri, no rational species would continue to oppose the Empire's will. "Admiral, we are detecting what appears to be a small human defense fleet near the outer edge of the Centauri system," reported his sensor officer as the Zephyrian ships emerged from hyperspace. "Approximately 15 vessels, probably converted merchant ships, attempting to evacuate civilian populations." Vextar laughed with genuine amusement at this. Pathetic display of human defiance. Allow them to see our full fleet before we destroy them. I want their final transmissions to Earth to convey the complete hopelessness of resistance against the Empire. What the Admiral saw on his tactical display was exactly what General Paul Stevens had wanted him to see. The human ships appeared, desperate and poorly organized, fleeing in panic from the approaching Zephyrian force. Their energy signatures matched those of hastily converted civilian vessels, and their movements suggested untrained crews trying to protect helpless colonists. Captain Danny Clark commanded the lead human vessel, a ship that appeared to be nothing more than a modified cargo hauler, but actually contained some of the most advanced technology humanity had ever developed. His crew of 12 included several of the finest pilots and engineers from Mars Colony, all of them volunteers who understood they might not survive the next few hours. All ships maintain the illusion until the enemy fleet is fully committed. Danny transmitted on the secure quantum channel that the Zephyrians couldn't detect. Remember, we need them to believe they're hunting helpless prey until Dr. Brooks activates the Harmony Drive network. The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack. Formation with the casual confidence of predators, approaching wounded animals. Admiral Vextar ordered his ships to surround the human vessels, wanting to savor their desperation before delivering the final blow that would end human presence in the Centauri system. Exactly that moment, thousands of light years away on Earth, Captain Ryan Bell's resistance forces began their coordinated assault on Zephyrian occupation facilities. The attacks were perfectly timed to coincide with the fleet engagement, ensuring that the aliens would face simultaneous crises that would overwhelm their ability to respond effectively. The first target was the main communications relay that the Zephyrians had built in the ruins of New York. Jenny Walsh led a team of 20 resistance fighters through the abandoned subway tunnels, carrying Dr. Carter's quantum disruptors in backpacks that looked like salvaged supplies. The Zephyrian guards at the facility were relaxed and inattentive, having grown accustomed to the apparent submission of human survivors. They had no idea that the work crews they supervised during the day were actually gathering intelligence for a resistance network that spanned the entire planet. "Disruptors are in position," Jenny whispered into her communication device as her team reached the optimal range. All teams report ready for simultaneous activation. Across Earth, similar resistance teams had infiltrated every major Zephyrian installation, using their deep knowledge of alien patrol patterns and security weaknesses. The occupying forces had made the fatal mistake of underestimating human adaptability and determination. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the entire operation from her underground laboratory, coordinating the technical aspects of the assault while maintaining communication links with both the surface resistance and the space-based forces. Her quantum disruptors were performing perfectly, their energy signatures completely invisible to Zephyrian detection systems. "All units, activate disruptors on my mark," Lisa transmitted as she watched the sensor readings from orbit show that Admiral Vextare's fleet was fully engaged with Captain Clark's ships. 3, 2, 1, execute. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Zephyrian facility on Earth suddenly lost power as the quantum disruptors overloaded their energy systems from within. Vehicles stopped working, weapons went dead, and communication systems failed across the entire occupation force. The aliens found themselves trapped in installations that had become prisons, their advanced technology rendered useless by weapons they never knew existed. Human resistance fighters emerged from hiding to capture facilities and equipment that moments before had seemed unassailable. In the Centauri system, Admiral Vextar received the first reports of the Earth uprising just as his fleet moved into final attack position against the human ships. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence, and the Admiral realized with growing alarm that he had been deceived about human capabilities. "Sir, "We're losing communication with our occupation forces throughout Earth." His communications officer reported with barely controlled panic. "All facilities are reporting simultaneous system failures and human attacks." Before Vexstar could respond to this unexpected development, Captain Clark's supposedly helpless fleet suddenly revealed its true nature. Dr. Helen Brooks activated the Harmony Drive network from her command center on Mars, and the human ships simply vanished from Zephyrian sensors. The ships didn't retreat or flee as the aliens expected. Instead, they phase-shifted through space using technology that the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered, materializing inside the alien fleet formation where their weapons could do maximum damage. The Zephyrian warships found themselves under attack from weapons that tore through their armor like paper. Human ships that had appeared defenseless moments before, now firing energy beams that disrupted Zephyrian shields and overloaded their power systems with terrifying efficiency. Admiral Vexstar watched in horror as his flagship's defensive systems failed under the assault from weapons that his science officers insisted were impossible. The humans were not using brute force like Zephyrian technology, but instead exploiting weaknesses in alien designs that no one had ever considered vulnerable. "All ships, emergency retreat," Vexstar ordered, but half his fleet was already disabled or destroyed. The human vessels moved through space like ghosts, attacking from directions that should have been impossible and disappearing before the surviving Zephyrian ships could respond. Captain Clark felt grim satisfaction as he watched the mighty Zephyrian fleet crumble under humanity's first real counterattack. His ship's Harmony Drive allowed him to strike and fade like a phantom, using technology that gave humans advantages their enemies couldn't match. "Target their command ship," Clark ordered his weapons officer. "Let's give Admiral Vexstar a personal demonstration of human capabilities." The quantum weapons that Dr. Carter and Dr. Brooks had developed specifically to counter Zephyrian technology proved devastatingly effective. Instead of trying to overpower alien defenses, they simply made those defenses irrelevant by operating on principles the Zephyrians had never mastered. On Earth, the resistance forces were securing one facility after another as the demoralized Zephyrian occupation troops found themselves cut off from their command structure and facing enemies who knew every detail of their operations. Commander Kate Wilson's team captured the main orbital control center, gaining access to the systems that regulated traffic between Earth and the alien fleet. "Ryan, we have control of orbital communications," Kate reported from the captured facility. "The Zephyrians are trying to call for reinforcements, but we can block their transmissions and feed them false information." Captain Ryan Bell smiled as he realized that the resistance had achieved something impossible just hours before. They had not only survived the Zephyrian occupation, but had turned it into a trap that was now closing around their alien oppressors. Commander Jake Morrison watched the battle unfold from Orbital Station 7, his crew working frantically to coordinate human forces while monitoring Zephyrian communications. The aliens were in complete chaos, unable to understand how their technologically inferior enemies had suddenly gained such overwhelming advantages. "Commander, I'm detecting massive power surges from the human ships," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez reported with excitement. "Their weapons are operating at energy levels that should be impossible for vessels that size." Jake nodded, finally understanding that humanity had been far more prepared for this war than anyone had imagined. The Zephyrians had attacked what they thought was a helpless species, only to discover that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have conceived. In the Centauri system, Admiral Vexstar's flagship was burning as human. Ships continued their relentless assault. The Admiral's arrogance had been replaced by fear and confusion as he realized that the Zephyrian Empire had made a catastrophic error in judgment. The humans were not the primitive insects that Zephyrian intelligence had reported. They were a species that had been secretly preparing for exactly this kind of conflict. Admiral Vextar's flagship drifted powerless in space, its hull torn open by weapons the Zephyrian Empire had never imagined possible. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the bridge where the once proud admiral now faced the complete destruction of his fleet at the hands of enemies he had dismissed as primitive insects. Captain Danny Clark's ship materialized directly in front of the crippled Zephyrian vessel, its harmony drive allowing it to appear and disappear at will like a phantom from humanity's darkest legends. The human captain opened a communication channel to the alien flagship, his voice carrying the cold authority of a species that had finally revealed its true nature. "Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Clark of the human fleet," Danny transmitted, his words echoing across the bridge of the alien ship. "Your war against humanity is over. Surrender your remaining forces immediately, or we will complete the destruction we have begun." Vextar stared at the view screen, showing the human vessel, his mind struggling to accept that his mighty fleet had been reduced to burning wreckage by ships he had been laughing at just hours before. Around him, his surviving officers worked desperately to restore power to their weapons systems. But the human quantum weapons had damaged their technology in ways that Zephian engineers couldn't repair. "This is impossible," Vextar whispered, his voice barely audible over the alarms and emergency announcements filling his bridge. "Our intelligence reports showed that humans possessed no advanced military technology." The Admiral's communications officer managed to restore partial contact with the few Zephyrian ships that remained operational, and the reports he received painted a picture of complete disaster. Half the fleet was destroyed, and the other half was crippled and defenseless against human vessels that could attack from any direction without warning. On Earth, Captain Ryan Bell stood in the main control room of the former Zephyrian Command Center, watching as resistance forces completed their takeover every alien facility on the planet. The quantum disruptors had worked perfectly, leaving the occupation forces helpless while human fighters emerged from hiding to capture installations that had seemed unassailable just hours before. Commander Kate Wilson coordinated the final mopping up. Operations as demoralized Zephyrian troops surrendered rather than face human forces who had somehow gained access to weapons that made alien technology useless. The same species that had been mining ore as slave labor were now marching their former masters into detention facilities. "Ryan, we have reports from every major city," Kate transmitted from her position overlooking the captured orbital control center. "All Zephyrian facilities are under human control, and their ground forces are either captured or requesting turns for surrender." Ryan allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he realized that the resistance had achieved something that would have seemed impossible when the first energy beams fell from the sky 6 months ago. They had not only survived the occupation, but had turned their apparent weakness into the foundation for total victory. Dr. Lisa Carter emerged from her underground laboratory for the first time since the initial attack, climbing through emergency access tunnels to reach the surface of what had once been Denver. The city above her was still in ruins, but now it was humans who controlled those ruins and the aliens who cowered in captured bunkers. The quantum disruptor technology that Lisa had developed had proven to be the key that unlocked human victory. By understanding Zephyrian weaknesses better than the aliens understood them themselves, she had created weapons that made their technological superiority meaningless. Marcus Johnson worked beside her to establish communication links with human forces across the solar system, coordinating the technical aspects of humanity's first major military victory. The young scientist who had helped develop the weapons that defeated an interstellar empire couldn't quite believe that their desperate research in a buried laboratory had changed the course of history. General Paul Stevens coordinated the final phases of Operation Retribution from his command center on Mars Colony, watching as human forces completed the destruction of Zephyrian military power throughout the solar system. The secret fleet that had been built in asteroid mining facilities was performing beyond all expectations, with Harmony Drive technology proving superior to anything the Empire possessed. Dr. Helen Brooks monitored the technical performance of humanity's advanced weapon systems, gathering data that would be crucial for the expansion of human military capabilities. Project Prometheus had been designed to give humanity the tools needed to survive in a hostile galaxy, and its success was now proven beyond any doubt. General, we're receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian commanders throughout the system, reported Colonel Amy Foster from her intelligence station. Their empire is demanding immediate negotiations for the return of their fleet and occupation forces. Paul smiled grimly as he realized that the Zephyrian Empire was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of their error. They had attacked what they believed was a helpless species, only to discover that humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of war for decades. Commander Jake Morrison's orbital station had become the center for coordinating human space operations as the last Zephyrian resistance crumbled. His crew worked frantically to process the massive amount of intelligence being gathered from captured alien vessels and facilities. Amy Rodriguez monitored communications from across human space, documenting the complete collapse of Zephyrian military operations. The aliens who had laughed at human suffering were now pleading for mercy from the species they had tried to exterminate. Commander, I'm detecting incoming transmissions from the Zephyrian home worlds, Amy reported with excitement. They're requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations and offering to withdraw all forces from human territory. Jake nodded, understanding that humanity had achieved something far greater than military victory. They had demonstrated to the entire galaxy that the human species was not to be underestimated or threatened by any alien power dot in the Centauri system. Admiral Vexstar finally accepted the reality of the situation as Captain Clark's fleet completed the destruction of the last functional Zephyrian warships. The admiral who had ordered the bombardment of Earth cities now found himself completely at the mercy of enemies who had every reason to show him the same consideration he had shown to human civilians. Human Commander, I formally request terms for the surrender of my remaining forces, Vexstar transmitted, his voice heavy with the knowledge that his military career and possibly his life were now in the hands of the species he had tried to eliminate. Danny Clark studied the tactical display, showing the wreckage of what had once been a mighty interstellar fleet scattered across space like broken toys. The human captain felt no satisfaction in the destruction, only grim determination to ensure that no alien species would ever again make the mistake of attacking humanity. Admiral, your surrender is accepted, Danny replied, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had proven its ability to defend itself against any threat. You and your surviving personnel will be taken into custody and held until arrangements can be made for prisoner exchange with your empire. The news of humanity's victory spread rapidly across known space as other alien species learned that the seemingly invincible Zephyrian Empire had been utterly defeated by enemies they had dismissed as primitive. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight, and every civilization now understood that humanity was a force to be respected and feared. Captain Ryan Bell stood among the ruins of Chicago, watching as human construction crews began the long process of rebuilding their world. The scars left by the Zephyrian bombardment would take generations to heal, but humanity had proven that they could survive anything the galaxy threw at them and emerge stronger than before. Dr. Carter worked with teams of scientists to study captured Zephyrian technology, adding to humanity's growing understanding of advanced alien systems. The knowledge gained from this conflict would help ensure that no future enemy would find humanity unprepared for war. President Alex Rodriguez emerged from his underground bunker to address the nation and the galaxy his words carrying the weight of a species that had faced extinction and chosen to fight back rather than submit to alien tyranny. Today, humanity has demonstrated that we will not be conquered, we will not be enslaved, and we will not be eliminated by any power in this galaxy. The President declared in a broadcast that reached every human settlement and alien civilization within 100 light years. Those who seek peaceful cooperation with humanity will find us generous allies, but those who threaten our people will face the full power of human resolve. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled through fear and superiority for over 1,000 years, now faced demands for reparations and territory from a species they had tried to exterminate. Their defeat sent shockwaves through galactic civilization as other alien powers realized that the balance of power had fundamentally changed. General Stevens coordinated with human colonial administrators to establish new defense agreements and military bases throughout human space.